Shrink on down, everybody, to episode 13 of Ben and Matt's Marvellous Journey. This is an ongoing podcast mini-series where we are discussing the entire history of the MCU, one film at a time. Was supposed to culminate with Avengers Infinity War. Marvel, as of this recording, have fucked our schedule, but that's fine, we'll keep going. I am Matt Waters. I'm joined as always by Ben Phillips. Ben, how are you this time around?
I'm good. I'm not trapped in London anymore after this
snowstorm. Yeah, to date this horrific snow in sort of the southeast of England. Well, all of Britain.
All of it, yeah. Also, is this really a mini-series? I feel like this might end up being longer than your Batman.
We call them mini-series whenever we do them, but I think because of the fact that this won't go on in perpetuity like some podcasts do, that because it has a finite end, it's a mini-series.
I mean, does it? Marvel have announced 9 new movies.
Yeah, but we're not going to just... who knows what the future will hold for this podcast. What I do know is this time around we are discussing Ant-Man. It is episode 12, not 13, but 12. And this one, well... It's, we talked about the challenges of launching a film off the back of a CGI raccoon and a giant tree. Trying to get the public to take a superhero called Ant-Man seriously was quite a challenge. I remember my girlfriend was very like, Ant-Man, and just laughed for an extended period of time when I mentioned it. So it was quite impressive that they made this into a nice little hit. Like, it wasn't gangbusters that got at the box office or anything. It's not like the best reviewed film, but that they took this really small property and made something out of it, especially considering the tumultuous production, which I will chronicle, is impressive, I thought. The villain isn't great, the third act's okay. It's a fun cast, they got to improvise a lot. Bobby Cannavale said it felt like making an indie film, but with a Marvel budget, so that's good. It's their first out-and-out comedy, really. Like, Guardians is also comedic, but very well received. And you had Guardians, you've got this, Deadpool's coming. It's a nice period for sort of more light-hearted, lower stakes superhero movies.
It does get the Marvel bump in terms of like how many people saw it, because it's kind of coming at the middle of Marvel machine at the peak of its powers, but it still does better at the box office than Thor and Captain America did. So more people went to the cinema to see this than went to see those movies, and look at like where we've come with those characters at this point. So it'll be interesting to see where Ant-Man kind of progresses from this movie.
Well, the sequel is looking dope so far, but released July 17th, 2015. There had not been a superhero movie since Age of Ultron. They had 3 movies in a row where they had nothing else coming out. So a nice unchallenged reign of superhero dominance for them. It is 117 minutes long, so it's one of their shorter films, which is appropriate. I will not intend to make so many size puns, but they're inevitable because how it all lines up. It's a $142 million budget, which is their smallest budget since Captain America 1 and Iron Man 1. They did lots of marketing for it, but yeah, pretty small budget.
It's got the best trailer for any Marvel movie.
Yeah, they released the micro trailer, didn't they? The ant-sized trailer.
There's that one.
They shouldn't have caved and done the full-size one the next day. They should have just literally had an ant-sized teaser.
But there was also the video of Michael Douglas and Paul Rudd just kind of like slapping their knees saying the word ants repeatedly, which is...
They also took out all the stuff from the trailers where he's like, is it too late to change the name? All that stuff. At the box office, it made $519 million, which is the smallest amount they have made in a post-Avengers world, but it is still a profit. Probably only just, because they probably spent quite a bit on marketing. But, made money. It's fine. They're okay. As I said, they've set up a nice little world with this, and I think they'll probably make a lot more money next time around, but who knows. Directed by Peyton Reed, who made Bring It On, Yes Man, and New Girl, amongst other things. Famously originally going to be directed by Edgar Wright. Again, I will get into it. Officially credited and in reality writing team. So you have Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish, who did, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim.
Well, Joe Cornish did Attack the Block, and then he helped Edgar Wright co-write Adventures of Tintin, but he was not the co-writer on... I
thought he was involved with all of those.
He's a good friend. The Adam and Joe podcast is probably... Adam and Joe show is what he's best known for, but him and Edgar Wright got along. He's in Hot Fuzz as an actor, but he didn't... Of course he is, yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. I'm very underprepared, apparently. The Three Cornetters trilogy is all Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg behind the scenes, really.
That makes sense because of his feelings on everything. Adam McKay and Paul Rudd, Andrew Barra and Gabriel Ferrari, who are writing the sequel. They wrote the telephone game sequences with Michael Pena and did a lot of writing, but they didn't get to be properly credited because of rules. Eric Pearson, who made a lot of the Marvel one-shots, and is a member of the writing program. He was part of this. David Callahan, who wrote the most recent Godzilla and is writing Wonder Woman 2, took a pass on it, through it even. So lots of people involved in this tumultuous production. Let's stop dancing around it and talk about it. So Stan Lee pitched an Ant-Man film in the late 80s, but Disney were making Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, so they were like, well, we can't do both. Howard Stern, of all people, claims to have tried to get the rights to Ant-Man in the year 2000, which he revealed to Paul Rudd when he interviewed him when he was doing press for this. That same year of 2000, Artisan Entertainment, they entered that deal with Marvel to make a bunch of films. That's come up quite a lot in previous episodes, that at one point they had a whole bunch of films in development for Marvel. None of them ended up happening. Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish wrote a draft for Artisan in 2003 that they believe was never even seen by Marvel. So when the MCU started taking shape, they were able to pitch to Kevin Feige basically for the first time. And it was slated to be part of Phase 1, much like Black Panther. Obviously, neither of those films hit that window by a long stretch, but hey. Several years of rewriting happened. Kevin Feige was stressing that because Ant-Man isn't a marquee character these days like he was in the early days of the Avengers, as Ben, I'm sure, will discuss, there was no pressure to get it out soon. It's a polite way of saying no one gives a fuck, so take your time. Edgar Wright made Scott Pilgrim during this time. He made The World's End. In fact, they were supposed to start production finally, but he went to do The World's End because someone involved in that was diagnosed with cancer, I think, and so he, as a favour, got to go do that first, even though he had scheduled to do Ant-Man. In 2012, he created a sizzle reel with some test footage and stuff. He screened that at Comic-Con. It got incredibly good feedback.
I got to see it at an overnight screening with Edgar Wright, actually.
Nice. I've never seen it.
I think it has leaked, but I got to see like the proper, like, this is actually the footage they filmed. Like, Edgar Wright came out and said, like, we're doing an evening of all my movies. It was in the run-up to World's End, and so he just said, like, does anyone want to see the Ant-Man test footage? And so they screened it to
Does anyone want to? No, we're good, thanks, Edgar.
But this was, 2013, so we were all still like, oh my god, Edgar Wright's doing a Marvel movie.
Crazy. It is crazy that he was working on this long before Iron Man was close to being a thing. Feige stated in 2013 the script needed some modifications to fit in with the MCU. Edgar Wright originally wrote it before that existed as a cohesive universe, obviously, and he was staunchly against that, and he wanted it to be 100% standalone, even though he had written them a scene to tack on to the film before this to set it up. But other than that, he wanted it to be completely self-contained, and that is what causes the eventual rift here. So despite his feelings, he casts Paul Rudd, he casts Michael Douglas, Evangeline Lilly, Michael Pena, and Patrick Wilson, who is the outlier here in that he didn't appear in the final film. A month later, Wright left the project after writing 5 or 6 more drafts. Or not more, but he had reached draft 5 or 6 at this point. He said that Marvel basically wanted him to direct it but not write it anymore, and he is very against that. I think he refuses to make films he hasn't written. Everyone has a different approach, but that's how he is.
I mean, when you're at the point where Edgar Wright has in his career now, you can kind of see he has a style and he knows how to write to his style.
Yeah.
And it pays off wonderfully when it goes really, really well, as you can see from how well received Baby Driver was this year. I would rather see Edgar Wright make his vision to its completeness rather than him be compromised and have to do stuff for hire. So
I get it, but now that the MCU... It's difficult, because when he started the project, that wasn't a thing that would have been said to him that he had to do, and then for them to say, now you must do it, it's changing the rules. It's moving the goalposts, it's changing the rules. To this day, he has not seen it. He said it would be like watching his ex-girlfriend have sex. Fair enough. He took the majority of his production staff with him, so it's pretty shocking they got this made, because they started on the schedule that was finally laid out. I think they talk about how they lost 10 months of editing time, and they still hit the deadline, which is crazy.
I wonder if that was editing time baked in, because Edgar Wright is notoriously, really tough on his edits. Really tough.
Perhaps, but they talked about how they were in, major crunch time to get this done. Joss Whedon claims that Edgar Wright's Ant-Man script is the best Marvel script he'd ever read. Damn it, Joss, why do you tease us like this? Adam McKay, of Anchorman and other things. Negotiated but passed on directing. Peyton Reed was ultimately brought in to do it. He'd been on the shortlist for Guardians of the Galaxy. He is a huge Marvel fan. He was happy to take over someone else's film as long as he got to participate. Among the people that they looked at were Ruben Fleischer, did Zombieland, Rawson Marshall Thurber, We're the Millers, Nicholas Stoller, forgetting Sarah Marshall, Michael Dowles, the Goon, and David Wayne of the Wet Hot American Summer verse.
Seems like they were going for a very particular kind of...
Yeah, they were looking for a sort of indie comedy person in the vein of Edgar Wright, you could say. Yeah, so they looked at all of them. They landed on Peyton Reed. They kept the basic DNA of Wright's script, but extensive reworking was done by Kay and Paul Rudd and Reed himself. They all consulted the cast heavily, especially Evangeline Lilly and Corey Stoll. They asked them, what do you feel your character would do? And they took that into consideration. I think that's all good and maybe something that should happen more, or maybe not, who knows. They added Cassie. Hope is her role expanded. Original Wasp was added, in flashbacks only, obviously. They did all that stuff. Paul Rudd allegedly is a dialogue machine, so good times there. They did a great job on the marketing, as we said, leaning into the silliness of this character. The ant-sized trailer, they did miniature billboards that you couldn't read that were teeny tiny on the street. All good fun. They spent more money on the marketing for this than they did on Age of Ultron, which I guess you don't really need to market another Avengers film after the Avengers is a huge hit, but this needs some more love and attention, so yeah, they did.
I just wanted to swing back for a second and just be
sure.
All those production issues,
yes,
is the main reason why this movie feels so compromised. I know we're jumping ahead on this point, but it's you list it all out there, and it's just these people came in and they had another person's vision, and they had to manufacture.
Oh yeah, it's
their own.
It's staggering that this got filmed, to be honest.
It didn't get delayed. Basically, these people came in, they picked up someone else's toys, and then bashed them together a little bit. And it's why Ant-Man and the Wasp is so much more exciting than this movie is, because this is the stuff that they realised they wanted to carry on playing with, and then all the new stuff that they want to kind of use.
It's it will be a 100% cohesive vision, as opposed to this, which is it's too that he took his entire production team is crazy, and that they had to hire new people on a drop of a hat and also rewrite it and all that stuff. It's crazy. It's sort of unheard of. The only other thing I can think of in recent memory like this is that they retooled a film to be Die Hard 4 that was originally not a Die Hard movie. It was wait, what? You did what?
Right left in May 2014, and then the movie came out of June the next year.
They started when he was going to start, and then they just got it done. They hired people quickly. Good thing Peyton Reed was already on their sort of watch list and everything.
The advantage of having an indie person or a TV person who they can work to a deadline or to a budget.
It's the Russo's thing.
Yeah, because the cast are probably going to be needed somewhere else in about 2 weeks' time, so you need to get it done quick and fast. This isn't Edgar Wright doing lots and lots and lots of takes of things and spending a year in the edit doing stuff. And I remember when Scott Pilgrim came out, he did a editor breakdown of the trailer with little pop-up things and stuff like that. It's how have you got the time to do this? It's because he's a perfectionist and wants to do these kind of things, which is not the Marvel machine method of making these.
So you now have the wonderful task of just breezing through the history of Ant-Man. There's only been one. Yellow Jacket's not confusing. It's all fine, right?
Oh, God.
And
okay.
It was always Scott. It was never Hank.
I don't even know where to start. Right, I'm going to start with Hank because original. Okay, so
yes.
Hank Pym.
Hit his wife.
No, that's way in the future. Hank Pym debuted in Tales to Astonish number 27, which did get a little shout out as a title in this movie, which I was quite happy with.
Edgar Wright, huge reader of Tales to Astonish, I believe.
Yes, he debuted in January 1962. Shockingly, he's created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. He didn't make his debut as Ant-Man, though, until Tales to Astonish number 35, but this was back in the day when they were kind of doing shorter stories. They were little 7-page things, and you'd pick them up every single month to find out what the continuing adventures were, rather than kind of complete tale or complete 22 issues. His wife, Janet Van Dyne, debuted in Tales to Astonish number 44 in 1963, again created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. They didn't really get kind of spun off into their own solo story. Instead, they kind of got absorbed into the Avengers. They are founding members of the Avengers, the two of them. They are the only two founding members of the Avengers not to be in the Avengers, as you've probably told from this. So those two debuted there. Probably most of their history is tied to the Avengers. I'd say if you're looking for stories about Hank Pym, you are going to be pointed to an awful lot of Avengers stories.
Ultron!
Yeah, most of them involving Ultron, most of them involving his split personality. Let's run down the list of identities that Hank Pym has gone by. He's gone by Ant-Man, Giant Man, Goliath, Yellow Jacket, Wasp, briefly.
Oh yeah, male Wasp, I remember that.
He's also currently Ultron in the comic books.
Carry on.
But that's not important.
No, what is important is...
Scott Lang.
Didn't hit his wife.
Didn't hit his wife. We're not getting into that. Marvel aren't going to adapt it. I'm happy Marvel aren't adapting that stuff.
I think it's a pretty wise decision to make it Scott, not Hank, because they've kind of had to move Hank to the side a bit because of that.
I mean, he's now actually a villain in the comic books, as we've just explained. Yeah, he is Ant-Man. Scott Lang debuted in Avengers number 81 back in 1979 by David Michelini and John Byrne. So not Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. I think the first hero in a solo movie not to be created by those two.
Wow.
Apart from Captain America, but Jack Kirby co-created that one, so that's quibbling. Like, one of those two has been involved in the creation of every single character so far. Scott Lang is the first hero we've had not created by one of the two greatest minds at Marvel, really. Probably, again, one of those people who most of the time's tied to Avengers stories and stuff like that, although he does have a very fun run being part of the Future Foundation around the time of Marvel Now, and then a solo series written by Nick Spencer, which came out when this movie came out, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've heard that. He's got Spider-Man now, right?
Yes, Nick Spencer is on Spider-Man as of now, and like those are his cup of tea. I mean, his Captain America run is controversial, to say the least.
Oh, yeah, that's him, isn't it?
That is him. He's better with the kind of light-hearted comic heroes.
Non-Nazi-based people.
Not Nazi-based people.
Right, now tell me about Eric Grady and Bill Foster. No,
we're not getting to those. I mean, we will have to get into one of those if we do Ant-Man and the Wasp. But
yes, we will.
We're going to talk about Cassie Lang, who is his daughter. They've aged her down massively for this movie, because in the comic books she is a teen hero who is part of the Young Avengers, joins the Avengers. She dies at one point, comes back to life, Stature's her name. So yeah, she exists. She's a lot of fun. If you again, the Young Avengers run where she is a main character is superb. Definitely highly recommend that one. Again, credited by David Michelini and John Byrne. So I mean, they've always been kind of part and parcel in the comic books. The Wasp, who appears in this movie, who never gets to become Wasp, is the MC2 universe version of Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne's daughter, called Hope Pym, who is a villain in her universe.
I have that written somewhere, actually, so there you go.
But basically, they just decided to move her into the main Marvel universe and have this be a story of generations, which I think is actually a really intelligent thing to do.
If you're going to do Scott, you kind of can't do Janet, so you make it Hope.
You make it Hope, and like even though she's never really been in the Marvel universe, it's still good. The Wasp, who will be appearing in Marvel Comics to tie in with Ant-Man and the Wasp coming out, is a different Van Dyne entirely. So I don't even...
Nadia?
Yes, I think so.
Which means hope in Russian.
Oh God, really?
Yeah, smooth, right?
And then finally we get to Darren Cross, who is Yellow Jacket, who was originally the codename that one of the codenames that Hank Pym went after
when he hit his wife.
When he hit his wife, and then this is basically Marvel doing that thing where once a codename gets discarded, it's free for someone else to use. Yes. So they just gave it to a different villain who debuted in the same issue as Scott Lang and Stature and Cassie Lang. So like it all makes sense in the end. It's really convoluted because there have been so many different Ant-Men, so many different
I don't know what you're talking about. That was succinct. Right, so we're now 40 minutes into the episode and have not started talking about it. A fun bit of trivia. In the MCU, the only heroes who have children are ones that used Pym particles in the comics, because Hawkeye at one point was Goliath, right?
Yes. I mean, he's got lots of names.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, Hank, Scott, and Hawkeye are the only three heroes in the MCU that have kids, and they all have that link of Pym particles. That's just fun trivia. Right, so here we go. Film opens in the late 80s. Hank is appearing before S.H.I.E.L.D. in a sort of makeshift Triskelion from Captain America Winter Soldier. That is fun. He refuses to share his shrinking technology, basically. So we have here Michael Douglas, de-aged as Hank Pym. Pretty smooth de-aging tech.
Is this the first time we get to see it in the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I believe so.
We get a bigger unveiling in the next episode, but this is the first unveiling of that magical de-aging technology, which is going to ruin cinema forever.
I actually think it in some ways looks better than the next one, because that one is so uncannily like, what? This just looks like really good like makeup in some ways.
Yeah, like I think it's because it's the first time you see him in the movie and we're not used to seeing him older. Like, I think it works a little bit better with Michael Douglas.
But yeah, he is there. John Slattery is back as Howard Stark. Hayley Atwell is back as Peggy Carter.
Yay.
Obviously Douglas cast Viagra, right? Well, he did a good job not like drowning in the silly dialogue. There's a lot of this in films where you've got these sort of esteemed actors having to say this comic book sci-fi bullshit, and like it just sounds wrong coming out of their mouths, and I think he just about manages to stay above water with his delivery of it throughout the thing.
Hasn't he come out in interviews afterwards and said like he had no idea what he was saying half the time?
I'm sure he didn't. I mean, I don't know what he's saying half the time. Some of the science does not check out. But, you know, he doesn't sound like a lost old man, and I think he has a very good chemistry with Paul Rudd. He is very stern and intimidating without being a complete, like, dickbag. So, and, like, this little scene at the beginning, I think is just... It's a really nice bit of continuity with the MCU to bring back John Slattery, who looks nothing like Dominic Cooper, to keep Hayley Atwell, who looks like Hayley Atwell. It's just good. Because Ant-Man was a founding Avenger, but we haven't seen him yet in this cinematic universe that has the Avengers, it's a smart way of giving him that historical context and to pave the way for Scott.
It's one thing, is like, it's impressive with the fact that this is the 12th movie. There is actually a sense of history to the MCU, and this movie does play on it in this first scene really, really well, because there's not many people that you can call on to kind of be... We've had these people in movies set in the 1940s, and we need to get this kind of middle ground area to kind of feel lived in. And it's something that Black Panther does really well as well. With, like, stuff happened in the past before we got into these movies before.
Yeah. These heroes don't just pop up out of nowhere. Like, they do have some history to them. They actually wanted Steve Buscemi for Hank Pym, which I can't see at all. They also looked at Sean Bean, Pierce Brosnan, who is like the definitive man that is lost in dialogue, and Gary Oldman, which would have been quite a get. But they ended with Michael Douglas. Fun little scene. I like John Slattery as Howard Stark, because obviously he and Pym don't get along. You get that line of dialogue later. It's like, I spent half my life trying to keep this tech out of a Stark's hands. I'm not going to hand it over to another one. When Martin Donovan as Mitchell Carson, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who is clearly working for Hydra, when he mentions Hank's wife and he sort of slams his face into the table, I like John Slattery's little, don't look at me, you said it, kind of thing. It's like, you know, I'm not a complete dick. Originally, this little scene was going to be a James Bond-style cold open with like a little mission, and you would just see the effects of what Ant-Man's doing. Because there's a video later that Darren Cross shows of one of Hank's old missions, and they had Geordie Mola as a sort of general character, and it was just going to be the Ant-Man like fucking up this army base, and I think that would have been a lot of fun, like a very stylish little thing to do, like a Bond film. But I do like this opening with the historic characters, but I kind of would have liked to have seen that. I think they filmed it, but they just discarded it because they reused that footage, obviously.
Yeah.
We then move to the present day. We meet Scott Lang on the day of his release from prison after robbing Vista Corp. He struggles to maintain employment because he is an ex-con, and he is met with scorn by his ex-wife when he showed up to his daughter's birthday party uninvited. I believe he's behind on child support, and she's basically saying, you can't see her unless you pay, and he can't get a job. So, fun little thing there. I'm going to kind of skip over some stuff to a more logical place, but for now, we have Paul Rudd as Scott Lang. Paul Rudd is just possibly the most charming man in Hollywood.
Yeah, I can't imagine this movie not being a comedy. So much of this is being described as like it's a heist movie and all the rest of it. I'm just like, I don't know if I could take Paul Rudd as a more serious heist kind of person. And I think like this kind of change in tone to more suit him really works.
Yeah. Edgar Wright cast him, and he was talking about how this guy, even he does bad stuff, you root for him because it's Paul Rudd. Like, he's so charismatic, he's so funny, he's so intelligent, all that. So it really works. He beat out Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ewan McGregor, and Adrian Brody, which would have been a really weird one. I've got to say, it's a bit of a surprise casting to see Paul Rudd in the MCU. More his interest than theirs.
Yeah, he feels like a notch bigger than a lot of other people who've done these so far. Like
they get a lot of people when they're up and coming. They've got Robert Downey Jr. when, like, you know, he needed them. Obviously, like, this is a big star who doesn't need Marvel to just sign up like this. It is pretty strange.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ant-Man's probably his biggest movie he's been in. but
maybe, I don't know. Anchorman's pretty big, and you know.
I mean, in terms of like money it made at the box office, I feel like
probably.
Yeah, like he's got a lot of those kind of like 100 to 200 million grossing comedies under his belt, but this is a Marvel movie, which is,
and you know, you're seeing a different side of him because he got too muscular. Is the problem. They made a suit for him, and when he showed up after his months of preparation, they had to change it because he was too ripped, and they had to take out all the padding and stuff.
Is that why they added the scene of him topless?
I'm sure it's why, with Hope sort of like, you know, giving him a little. I mean, why not? Yeah, it's shocking to see Paul Rudd like as an action dude. Like he's a serious actor. I know he's known for comedies, but he started out as like this Shakespearean trained dramatic actor who is still very good at drama. But I think he finds his niche in dramatic comedy because he has that aptitude for it. But to see him as a ripped dude who's throwing punches and stuff, it's like, oh, wow, cool. Yeah.
More or less surprising than Chris Pratt?
I'm going to say more, because I mean, at least he was in Zero Dark 30 and stuff. But
yeah, but I mean, Chris Pratt was doing that thing where he was just going up and down in terms of his weight around this movie.
Yes. The prison scene is, the little swerve, him in a prison fight that turns out to actually be amicable. That is funny. The Baskin-Robbins stuff I like. Chipotle turned down the offer to be the company he works for because they didn't like being portrayed negatively. Who could imagine?
We hire ex-cons, we promise.
Indeed. Baskin-Robbins always finds out is a fun little line there. Judy Greer of Arrested Development fame, you know, these characters from Arrested Development and Community will find their way into the MCU forever. She plays Maggie, his ex-wife. She doesn't have many lines, but she's fine.
She's kind of wasted is the sad thing. It's like, I love Judy Greer. She's great in almost anything, and this is underwritten to the max. Like
Bobby Cannavale is her new fiance. He's a policeman. This is the role that Patrick Wilson was going to play. You could perfectly imagine him doing it, in that you naturally don't side with the new boyfriend of the character's ex-wife, but you also can't hate him because he's such a nice dude. I could see Patrick Wilson doing that. Rudd and McKay really, really went after him. They called him before Marvel did, so it's a good thing Marvel were like, yeah, okay.
I mean, Bobby Cannavale is one of those weird ones where I was just coming off watching him in like Boardwalk Empire and all these other things, and then for him to be playing the nice stay-at-home like police officer dad was just like, this is very different to how I've been seeing you recently.
You mean you didn't? Yeah, I get. Oh, recently. Okay, I was going to say, you mean you didn't watch him in Will and Grace, Ben? Come on. Always playing cops, always playing gangsters. That is his Italian heritage. He has a nice warmness to him, I think. You can't like dislike him. Like, he's right about what he says.
Yeah, Bobby Cannavale is one of those really charismatic actors that I would watch in pretty much anything, and it makes this role better, because this could have been very underserved and very much like, oh, we're just going to position him to be the dickhead who you hate because Paul Rudd doesn't like him, but like it actually, you kind of root for him because you're like, no, he is a fuck up and he has reasons for like doing nothing wrong, and you don't dislike him for getting in the way of the hero, which is a very tough line to balance on.
Yeah. Stealthily one of the best actors in the film, Abby Ryder Fortson as Cassie Lang. You know, she's barely got any lines, but they're all amazing. Like when he gives her the little rabbit with the ugly, the sharp teeth and everything, she's like, he's so ugly, I love him. And, you know, saying she hopes that he doesn't catch her dad and stuff. She's a lot of fun. The little bunny is voiced by Tom Kenny, aka SpongeBob SquarePants. That's fun. So, you know, in this desperate situation, Scott reluctantly agrees to take a job from his former cellmate, Luis, and his crew. Scott successfully breaks into the house, cracks the safe, but finds nothing but an old motorcycle suit, as he calls it. But Hank Pym has been watching the entire thing on some surveillance equipment. Michael Pena is Luis. Wow. What a wonderful thing. He based this on a guy that he knows in real life who he said, like, you'd ask him how he was, and like, oh yeah, I went to prison this weekend, it's fine, it's cool. It's just like that opening scene where he's like, oh, how's your girlfriend? Oh, she left me, and my mom died, and my dad got deported. Well, you still got the van, right? Yeah. And it's just so, like, saying all this stuff with this goofy, like, vacant smile on his face. It's, like, Michael Pena is such a good actor, and that he can slip into roles like this and then do something dramatic as well. It's similar to Paul Rudd, but more so, I think, is incredible. And, you know, obviously the signature thing from this film, the thing that everyone talks about, these little telephone game sequences where he is lip dubbing to other actors and telling these elaborate stories. So good. Wonderful stuff.
He's also one of the few characters who debuted in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that ended up in the comics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's in the Astonishing Ant-Man series by Nick Spencer.
Nice.
So, again, like, you can tell the character kind of becomes bigger than the movie when they end up debuting in the comics as well. Like, when the art form that they are copying everything from ends up copying from this itself.
He's just like a lovable idiot. It's fun. And there's some slightly illogical stuff with him late in the film, but I feel they just wanted to keep him on screen.
There are people who are still, like, in comments about, like, Ant-Man and the Wasp. They're just like, but is Michael Pena in this? Because
of course he is. I hope they don't do this again, but I hope they do something of that tone. Also, we have T.I., the rapper, as Dave. I'm shocked he got this role, and I'm more shocked he's not actively bad, because no rappers are good actors except Donald Glover. Method Man's okay, fine. Ice-T, I suppose, is still on television always. It feels like a stunt casting, but he's not atrocious, so we'll let it go. David Dastmalchian, something like that.
Dastmalchian, yeah.
Yeah, as Kurt. He is in The Dark Knight. He's that fake ambulance driver who's wearing a name tag that says, "My name is Rachel Dawes." That's his claim to fame. He has a Russian accent for no discernible reason, because despite his last name, he is American.
Multicultural?
Yeah, true.
Question mark?
Yes. They're a fun little crew. Michael Pena is obviously like the main attraction. You have sort of T.I. and Dave and Kurt there for some little stuff, but they don't get in the way. The heist stuff is really, really fun. I kind of wish this was the majority of the movie in some ways, and maybe Edgar Wright's version was this, but him breaking into him's house, him cracking the safe with the liquid nitrogen and the mattress, and getting the fingerprint, which is something that obviously we've seen since Eddie Murphy did it in Beverly Hills Cop, but, similar concept. It's all really good stuff, showing that he's clever, and also being a lot of fun.
I said earlier that I'm kind of glad that they pivoted the role to kind of be more like Paul Rudd, but, like, the high stuff is where this movie kind of gets really good. I do kind of get distracted when it becomes, like, a very obvious, this is a CGI test board that we made earlier, over top of it, which is, like, I'm fairly sure a lot of the special effects, like the time frame that they had to make this movie in, probably a lot of those things were done with Edgar Wright's supervision. And
probably.
You look at those kind of things, you're just like, I feel like they must have been storyboarded by someone else, because they're so complicated and kind of playing with the perspective and size and so much of this, like the whole scene where he first shrinks down in the bathtub.
Yes,
like,
that's coming next.
There's so many different layers to that. It can't have just been something they made in the 12 months that it took to make this movie.
I like that he's, like, adaptive. He's not just, like, completely smooth, like things go a bit wrong and he just thinks his way around them. It's seeing Paul Rudd be too slick is a bit much, but I mean, I suppose he does pull everything off, but I don't know, it's just like the energy to it has a good balance. So, despondent that they've seemingly broken into this house for nothing, takes the suit and he flees the scene, and he puts it on for some reason, and by pressing the little button on the glove, he shrinks down to Ant-Man size, because it is, of course, Hank Pym's old Ant-Man suit, and he communicates to him over the helmet radio, and is, like, talking him through what this is. He has some little hijinks where he falls through floorboards and ends up on a turntable and gets sucked up a Hoover and sees a giant rat, and he freaks out and returns.
Okay, I want to point out my first issue with the science of this movie.
Okay.
So, he falls out of the bathtub.
Yes.
Dents the floor.
Yes.
Cracks the tile.
Yes.
He cracks the tile because he weighs so much that when he falls, he cracks a tile.
Yes.
The next scene, he falls down an entire flight of stairs onto a turntable and nothing happens.
Yes. I read an article about the science of this movie, and apparently he would have the same gravitational pull as, like, a white dwarf, and he would just fall through the earth because of his weight sort of size.
I mean, I don't care about that. I just care about more that, like, the weight of things in this movie is so weirdly inconsistent.
Other than the bathtub thing,
he punches people in the face and they go flying.
Well, they give you that bullshit line that, like, you have the same amount of strength just in a smaller, concentrated thing. But yes, if you really break down the science, he would suffocate because he'd basically be breathing at the top of a mountain. He wouldn't be able to cool his body. He would fall through the earth. All these things, but
also that strength thing gets in the way in the next movie in this series.
Yes. Okay.
If he grows big and then he's not stronger, he's as strong as he was when he was a small man. He can't do anything when he's massive.
Look, it's fun, okay? He shrinks and beats people up. That's fun. Focus. The
distracted me.
shrinking visual effects, I think, are really well done. Their sort of replacement cinematographer after Edgar Wright took his with him is Russell Carpenter, who made Indian in the Cupboard, which is very appropriate. They did a lot of microphotography, which was done by Rebecca Baylor, who's an expert in that field. They didn't want to use like oversized props or anything like that they usually do in shrinking stuff. It's all really good stuff, and like the little lines around him as he shrinks are a nice little nod to the old comics from when he shrank. It's a fun little scene, like, the little dude. It's low-hanging fruit, but it's well done, I think.
Yeah, they do a lot of cool things with cutting out to big people reacting to stuff that's happening when he's little, which I think works really well. Like the guy in the taxi reacting as he puts the dent in the roof, and then he grows big, and he's just like, what the hell is happening? I mean, my favourite one comes in the last act, so we'll bring it up there. But like, I really like those kind of cutaways. Again, it is low-hanging fruit, but it's well done low-hanging fruit.
Yes. So Scott, freaks out. He breaks back into Pym's house and puts the suit back. He is arrested because we'll later find out that Hank's daughter called the police. So in comes his ex-wife's boyfriend to arrest him. He is put in a prison cell. But Pym sends him the suit via small ants that he controls telepathically. Yes, that happens. Scott puts the suit on. He escapes the prison on the back of a winged ant. He ends up in Hank Pym's house. But we have here Wood Harris as Gale. Now, do you want to talk about The Wire?
I do want to talk about The Wire. I've watched The Wire.
You've seen The Wire? Oh, wow.
I've seen The Wire. Wood Harris, obviously best known for D'Angelo Barksdale on The Wire.
And just being a threatening-looking dude in so many movies.
Yeah, he's one of those weird ones where I love Wood Harris as D'Angelo Barksdale, but that role never evolved into anything bigger than him, and so he's kind of one of these guys who gets stuck with henchmen or threatening dude in the background when Idris Elba goes from strength to strength to strength because he got to do more interesting things. But yeah, Wood Harris...
Idris Elba, definitely in The Wire.
Definitely is in The Wire. But yeah, Wood Harris, he's good fun here.
Yeah, he gets 4 lines, but he's good.
When his reaction to the fact that Scott gets away and he drops the yak out on the floor in one of the many, many, many product placement things in this film.
Well, they got to pay for this, behind schedule production somehow. Yeah, the escape it's low stakes fun, whatever. Scott ends up in Hank's house. Hank convinces him to work for him, to use his skills as a thief to break into Pym's old company and steal the Yellow Jacket prototype from Darren Cross, who is our villain we haven't talked about yet, because he wants to...
not.
We're going to have to. He wants to mass-produce the suit and use it for war and international... I love the little montage showing off what it can do and just casually, yes, you can assassinate people. It's like, wait, what? Who are you showing this to?
Hydra.
Well, I know that, ultimately, but it just seems initially that it's a more harmless, low-key, fun meeting. I don't know. It doesn't seem like he's pitching it to the buyers yet. But anyway, so Scott trains with Pym and also his daughter Hope. So we will be talking about some of these people. Evangeline Lilly of Lost fame as Hope Man Down. One of the many roles in Marvel that Jessica Chastain has turned down. I've been waiting for Evangeline Lilly to become a star because Lost was such a huge thing, and it's remarkable to me how few of the cast of Lost have become big deals out of Lost. And
yeah, it's weird that she's probably the one who's got the biggest projects afterwards. Also quite amusing that her ex-boyfriend was in the Lord of the Rings movies and then she got to be in the Hobbit movies, which is a nice weird sense of symmetry to all this. But yeah, this is the biggest movie I think that any of them have gone on, any of the cast members of Lost have gone on to do in such a leading role. Obviously Adewale Akinnuoye Bajé was in Thor Ragnarok.
You reel that off, you prick.
He was obviously in Thor Dark World. I think I said Thor Ragnarok.
You did.
He was in Thor Dark World.
He was.
But she obviously is the lead. She's in the title of the next movie. She's the first female lead in the title of one of these movies.
Yeah. Wonder Woman beat them to it just. But,
and it's a co-credit as well. So.
But, it's a co-credit. It's not Ant-Man 2. And I think that's good.
Not Ant-Man 2.
Also, they don't like numbers anymore, so it's a good way for them to get what they want both ways.
But no, she's good. I mean, I feel she kind of got lost in the later seasons of Lost. But she was, she was supposed to be the star of it. Obviously, the change of production behind that when Michael Keaton didn't want to do the role, so Jack stayed alive. She kind of got shuffled to second lead rather than first lead. J.J. Abrams always has a fantastic eye for casting famous actresses, Jennifer Garner being probably the biggest of those. So it's nice to see that finally someone has picked her up for one of these.
Yeah, and I'm glad that her role got expanded. Like, I think it sucks that Edgar Wright wasn't going to give her as much to do, but yeah, she's pretty fun. She does a better job, I think, than Michael Douglas of taking this silly material quite seriously. It's fun. She actually almost dropped out when they switched directors. It took meeting with Paul Rudd and reading the new script and everything to keep her on board. And she talks positively about the Edgar Wright draft and all that, but I think it's all worked out probably better for her in the long run.
Like, have you seen the behind the scenes stuff for this movie? It feels like she's fully embraced this character and is very all in on it. Like the scene of like her workout photos she put out of like what she's doing behind the scenes is.
Yeah. Well, she does the thing where she kicks his ass basically for 10 minutes, and
she does.
That's how you throw a punch, and like she's doing all these MMA takedowns and stuff. It's all really good fun. She's not like the dainty lady, because I mean the big plot is that she is clearly more capable than Scott, but Hank won't let her do it, and he won't tell her why. And so they have this frosty relationship. She uses her mother's name of Van Dyne, not Pym. All that stuff. It ultimately is revealed to be the tragic flashback with Janet that she shrank too small and she was lost in the quantum realm. Basically, you go to Scott because Scott's expendable. If he dies, that's sad. If his daughter dies, that's devastating.
That's everyone in his life gone.
Yes. So I think they balance it well. Like it comes across, or it could come across as like basically like rampant sexism, but I think she does a really good job of showing like, look, I'm super capable, like fuck you.
It's almost like a less winky version of what happens in Iron Man 1, where you introduce a character who everyone knows gets in a suit at some point, but they're like not going to do it in the first one, and so they actually make it a plot point rather than like a throwaway line. We know you want her in this, but for this movie we have an emotional through line that explains why we're not doing it yet, that like actually helps to make these characters feel more real. They have more depth, and I think it works well. And
the stuff with Janet is like, it's a warning, and because in these sorts of films you have to set up rules and then you have to show what happens when these rules are broken, and it foreshadows the ending where he has to break the rule and he gets around it anyway. It's a good way to like not completely ignore the existence of Janet Van Dyne but still have hope as the new Wasp. So I'm a big fan of that. The training with the ants generally, I'm sort of torn about that. I think it's both good and bad. Like, it's pretty goofy, some of the stuff they do with these ants.
They really lean into the ant side of his name.
Yeah, I kind of wish it was more shrinking based and less telepathically controlling ants based, but hey.
Good fun. I mean, we get our second Marvel character, our Marvel hero, to die in a movie who doesn't get to come back.
Okay, fine. So, all of that is fun. So as a kind of final exam for his training, Scott has to go get a magical, wonderful MacGuffin device from an abandoned Stark warehouse facility in upstate New York. Now, what's in upstate New York? Oh yeah, as of the end of Age of Ultron, the new site of Avengers HQ. And Scott goes ahead with the plan anyway, and he manages to steal this device despite the Falcon being there to defend it. So Anthony Mackie is back as the Falcon.
Gets more to do in this than he did in Age of Ultron.
Yes, he is shockingly capable, was my first thing, because I was kind of like, it's cool he can fly and stuff, but like in this it's like, oh, you're basically a kick-ass hero all by yourself, aren't you? That's cool. Basically, Paul Rudd and Adam McKay went to see The Winter Soldier together while they were working on drafts of this film, and they really loved him, and they sort of jokingly brought up the idea of putting him in it, and then Kevin Feige's like, yeah, I could probably get you Anthony Mackie, and so they put him in the film. It was a really fun surprise. He's in none of the trailers, and you're just watching the film, and suddenly, oh shit, Falcon's here. And it's the right level of hero, and the right sort of level of stardom for a cameo to keep Ant-Man in a corner of the MCU while still, keeping it connected. Like, if this had been Iron Man, if this had been Thor or Cap, it would have been too much. It would have been weird. But Falcon is a right level of hero. Like, he gets to have his little moment of kicking Scott's ass, but Scott ultimately triumphs. So I think this was well done. I know this is kind of, you say it feels very tacked on. It does stick out compared to the rest of the film, but I think it's ultimately fun.
If you imagine that they're taking the Edgar Wright script as a template, this does feel like this is the one thing in the script that wasn't in the outline of that original script. And like, yes, it is fun, and I think it's the first time we actually get like cross-pollination between franchises. Other cameos have been like Cap showing up in Thor the Dark World for 2 seconds, whereas this is the first time that a hero has appeared and has a fully fledged scene in a movie, and really starts to like build on that sense of like these movies are all interconnected. But it is one of those things where we haven't had an action bit in a minute, and we need to make sure that you know that this is tied into the cinematic universe. So here's your tie into the Avengers. And as, like, again, it's fun, but it's one of those things where it's just like the cynic side of me is just kind of like, oh, but you did this so you could market it probably at some point.
But then they kept him out of the marketing.
Yeah, but I'm sure I'm sure the initial thought was like, we'll market this, and then they said like, oh no, we'll keep this.
But then why would you make it Falcon? Anyway, I like that he starts with, "Hi, I'm Scott." It's like, oh, you idiot! Like, he's not smooth. He is just a dude who's found himself in this weird situation. And the little at the end, it's very important to me that you do not tell Cap what happened here. It's a nice little nod to an episode of the Avengers cartoon, which is very, very good, which has a similar plot, but with Luke Cage and Iron Fist hired to catch this thief who ends up being Scott Lang. And Luke Cage is defeated by Scott, and he's like, don't tell Cap or whatever. Fun little thing. Edgar Wright watched that episode for research while writing it, so that's a weird little thing that they were both leaning into there. So Scott brings in his crew to assist with the big job at the end, and despite Cross seemingly having rumbled them, they go ahead with the job. But at the final hurdle, Cross sort of thwarts them. There's chaos. He shoots Hank. He tries to kill Hope. He puts on the Yellow Jacket suit ultimately. Big fight with Scott. He takes Cassie hostage. So Scott sees no other option. He shrinks through the suit into the quantum realm. He kills Darren Cross quite violently. And he's trapped in the quantum realm briefly, but he manages to fix the suit and escape. I've basically gone over pretty much an hour's worth of content there, because a lot of it hinges on Darren Cross, who I don't want to talk about for a long time, and also because the heist is really fun. It's not quite as fun, I don't think, as the initial scene where he's breaking into Hank's house. It's still like pretty good. Everyone's playing their little roles. There's a couple of little plot holes with why is he going in through the vents or through the water when he could just be in Hope's pocket or Luis's pocket. I know. But he's tiny. I guess it's a company that's working on shrinking tech, so they'd be like on the lookout. Anyway, it's fine.
It's super easy to skim over it because so much of this movie feels very, very light.
Yes.
Because of the trouble behind the scenes, so much of it is just kind of light sketches of ideas that you're relying on a very talented cast to kind of like carry you across the finish line.
Yes.
And they do that, and the cast makes this movie fun and light and breezy, but there's no meat to anything that goes on in the last hour of this movie. No. Once Hope and Hank Pym have the conversation about what happened to her mother, there's kind of no emotional stakes to this movie until Yellow Jacket kidnaps Cassie. Yeah.
I was watching this before we started, and I got to the end of that conversation that you just mentioned, and I was like, shit, there's like 57 minutes left in this movie. I swear everything good except Thomas the Tank Engine has happened. But the tank is pretty cute. Like, Hank has this little tank keychain. It turns out it's a real tank that he shrunk down. And that's pretty fun.
The second best thing that was small going through a wall of the movie.
That's true. The Corey Stoll is Darren Cross. I really don't.
I like Corey Stoll.
Everyone likes Corey Stoll. It's a perfectly fine performance, but it's boring. It's 90s villain as hell.
In his second scene, he does shrink a man and then flush him down the toilet.
He does. I really like that moment before, because when he does that, because the dude like questions the entire presentation. He takes a really long pause while smiling at him before responding, and I think that's a really nice little beat that he does. And I think that's probably an example of something he got to like contribute to the character about. Like, it's not so much an undeveloped character as much as it's one note. I understand his motivations.
So evil for like no reason.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, it's just so one note. Him shrinking to various objects throughout the film it's kind of fun, I guess. Like when you see the lamb being led down the corridor, you're immediately like, oh no, like you get it. But it's just, I don't think this movie needed a villain. I think it could have just been an out-and-out... The police are the villains. Like, he's trying to steal shit that's important to stop something. But I don't think it really needed a villain. Or, like,
it is like a well-meaning CEO who thinks that he's going to help the world with this tech, and there's buyers from Hydra who want to try and steal it, but Hank Pym wants them to steal it from underneath them. There doesn't need to be the costume villain who is the hero.
It feels very Ike Perlmutter, I've got to say that. I feel there must be a toy. There must be a villain toy to fight. But maybe one day we'll get one of these movies where there isn't necessarily a bad guy who's rubbing his hands and going, Mwah! But we very much have one here. What a waste of Corey Stoll. Well, not a waste. I don't know. It's not badly acted. It's just not quite lame, not quite boring, just somewhere between those two.
What did you think of the scene where they played The Cure in the suitcase?
That's so on the nose, it's ridiculous. Yes, I was going to say...
I'm going to disintegrate you.
Playing Disintegration by The Cure. And they use a phone that wasn't even out yet as well, so thanks Apple for the marketing money. That's whatever. I do like them falling into the swimming pool. You know, they've been falling hundreds of feet and then it's like a tiny splash. But let's talk about the real thing we all came to this episode to talk about. Thomas the motherfucking Tank Engine. They're having this fight through Cassie's room. And, you know, they're crawling through the carpet fibres and it's like a giant forest, and then they get onto the tracks and they're smashing shit with the trains, and Yellow Jacket ends up on the tracks. Thomas is coming right at him, and then they do one of the greatest bits of editing. We see the zoom out and it's just the most pathetic tiny little doop, and just falls off, and it's incredible. And I kind of wish they didn't put it in the trailer because it's so funny, but it's great. The rules they had, the hoops they had to jump through to get Thomas in, but I think the Thomas the Tank Engine people were happy with it. Chipotle, too good for this, but Thomas the Tank Engine are happy with their brand being associated.
I mean, I feel like because the Thomas Tank Engine brand is majoritively owned by the UK, I think they understand what is going on here. They're just like, no, this is our sense of humour. We'd never be able to show this to people who actually watch Thomas the Tank Engine or the actual age demographic, but no, like, this is funny. It's one of those things, and I feel like it's set up a lot of other things to do in the future, like, because there's the Hello Kitty moment in the trailer for Ant-Man and Wasp, which feels very much like we are going to take popular icons and just make them bigger, because making them bigger makes it funny.
That will help us fund these enormously expensive films.
Yeah.
The stuff in the quantum realm is gorgeous. It seems like a prelude to Doctor Strange, which is, you know, a general thing is that this was originally called the beginning of Phase 3, and then they decided, no, it's the end of Phase 2. It feels like it's Phase 3 because we're going to... You know, it's not technically another realm, but it's not quite Earth as we know it, and it just seems like it would fit in a lot more there. It's a nicely done thing with Scott kind of accepting his fate briefly, but then he escapes, and it, of course, gives us hope that Janet will be alive. I mean, she's been cast, so...
But you also see, like, the silhouettes of her as he's getting bigger and smaller and stuff like that in the background. So like, they are playing very heavily on the fact that... Like,
she's alive.
She's alive, and she'll play into the plot somehow, sometime.
Yes. Yeah, so, you know, Paxton ends up covering for Scott, and it's all a lovely, happy ending where he's got this nice relationship with his ex-wife, his daughter, and Paxton,
and their pet ant.
Yeah, that's weird. Oh, that's a messed up looking dog.
No one reacts to it, though, in that final scene.
I know, is it like, oh, we'll let you keep it? Or do they not know this thing that's bigger than most dogs is under their table?
Because doesn't she, like, go shh to it? It's just like, how is that a secret? Like, it's under the table, and it's pretty big.
It is. Scott also kisses Hope. I have heard reactions both ways as to whether this is good or not. I think it's well done in that, you know, he's like, oh, God, Hope, really grabbing me like that? Not cool. Yeah.
My girlfriend is not a fan, but then she's not a fan of people who have will they won't they tension following through on the will they won't they tension at the end of the movie because it's so trite. That's a big issue.
I mean, I'm a big proponent of not every movie needs a kiss or a romantic thing in it. One of the biggest offenders I've ever seen is Edge of Tomorrow, where, like, you know, he's fallen in love with this woman gradually. She don't give a shit about him. She's meeting him for the first time every day, and they go with this, like, big romantic kiss at the end. It's like, ugh, whatever. Anyway.
Disagree, but continue.
All right, fine. So, you know, in our sort of closing scenes, Luis reveals that the Falcon is looking for Ant-Man, which is a scene in the end of the credits directly out of Civil War, where they're like, I know a guy. And obviously it's Ant-Man, in a very confusing scene to put in the end. But
is this the first one that's like literally a scene from the next movie?
Captain America 1 did it with Avengers.
Oh, that's true. Yes, this is the second one of those.
But at least this is at the right aspect ratio.
Yeah, but I feel like this is very lazy. This could have been something fun. Like, yes, it's more interesting than Thor making out with his girlfriend at the end of Thor the Dark World, and then like a big ice doggy jumping around outside. This is something that people are going to pay money for to see in a couple of months.
I don't know, it left me a bit confused about, like, you see this scene isolated and then you see it in the movie, and it's like you get a completely different sense of what's going on, where it's like, it seems like they need to get Ant-Man to do something, whereas instead it's like, oh, we just need allies, oh, I know someone. More importantly, though, Pym gives Hope her own suit in a mid-credits sequence as the new Wasp. With Scott shrinking down, it's like renewed his faith that Janet isn't dead. You know, he's had his bonding moment with Hope earlier on. all this stuff is good, so he presents her with that suit. I think it's a really cool looking suit. I don't know if the one he gives her at the end of this is the same as the one she's wearing in the Ant-Man and the Wasp, but either way...
The trailer, like, the colouring is very similar.
It's a cool looking suit. I like that it looks so similar to his, that it's not like, and you're the girl, so your one is pink or yellow or whatever, you know, like, I like that they look like a little set.
Here is the skirt we've attached to your suit.
Exactly, yes. Here is your pink Power Ranger skirt. Yeah, I think that's a fun little thing. It's a good moment between them as well, and I honestly cannot wait for her to be an active superhero, and I'm so glad that she's enthusiastic about it, because I think she's great.
Yeah, so much of this movie lays a lot of groundwork, and I think it's just a shame that the foundation that this movie was built on was so rocky, because there's a lot here that is really good. And it's like, as we said, like, it's a fun, it's breezy, it's 2 hours, which is a godsend in this era of like 2.5 hour to 3 hour movies. But because there's not much to it, when you're comparing it to these other movies that feel so instrumental or so culturally important, it's gonna get lost. It's a better movie than Thor: The Dark World, which had similar production issues, but it's not aiming for anything higher than that.
Well, they managed to find enough little hooks to like get it by, you know. It's like, right, we've got this cool cast, we've come up with these cool telephone game sequences, we've got this fun Thomas the Tank Engine stuff, and we've got heists. Like, I think that will be enough, and if we market the shit out of it, I think we've got enough here that people won't just actively dismiss it. And they set up a really good foundation. That trailer for Ant-Man and the Wasp is about as good a trailer as I've seen Marvel put out. Like, I'm very excited for that film. So miscellaneous stuff, we've got Stan Lee as a bartender in a cameo.
In one of those telephone sequences.
Yes, crazy stupid fun. Garrett Morris, who played Ant-Man on SNL, plays that cab driver. I think that's fun. There's probably many other tiny cameos, but we don't have the time. So just some other little tiny things. Rashida Jones and Emma Stone were considered to play Janet in the flashback, which is fun. Jordan Peele had a role in Edgar Wright's script. Don't know what role. Excited, though. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, ironically, said she wanted to play the Wasp, I guess, when Edgar Wright was still attached. So, you know, burn to her. There's a couple of fun, tiny references to Age of Ultron. There's a newspaper that's, like, asking who's really responsible for Sokovia. I think there's a line about dropping a city on people, like, you know, tiny little bits of continuity. So before we get out of here, as always, the common criticisms: the villain sucks, the third act's bad, you know, that kind of stuff. Does that apply? Well, kinda, because Cross is so dull it's painful. He basically gets in the way of the fun and the tone in a lot of ways. As I said, it kind of feels like he didn't need to be here. It feels like a mandate that there must be a big fight at the end instead of just a bigger, longer heist. There's not really much to say here. This villain is not good. Like, he's forgettable to bad.
Yeah, like, I mean, he's probably better than Eccleston got to be in Dark World.
Oh yeah,
but
that's like Hall of Fame bad.
But this is it's not good. It's not memorable.
It's the least necessary villain I think they've ever done. He just is there because he has to be. So the third act, I mean, to me, when I think of it, despite how good that little bit with Thomas is, and you know, some of the stuff at the end being fun, it's just so tied in with Darren Cross and the Yellow Jacket fight and everything generally, that I just do not have a positive memory of this third act. It's
on a technical level, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
like, there's a lot of little beats, and like it ends with the like really lovely looking scene where he goes down into the subatomic realm and all the rest of it.
And it ends on a nice little note, and the final line is a joke, which is not a common thing, and you know, all that is fun. It's just all this Cross stuff leaves such a bitter taste in your mouth that you kind of think of. As I said, I kind of summarized it when I was like, oh, there's 57 minutes left in this movie.
It doesn't feel like it takes a step down as drastically as some of the movies where we've talked about recently, where like it's not Guardians of the Galaxy with like the dance, but like it's so immemorable. And
exactly.
It doesn't feel like, it feels like the movie should have been building up to something different, which I feel like is a completely different complaint to whether or not this is bad. It's just like they should have gone back to the drawing board and rethought what they thought the conclusion of this movie should have been, as opposed to like basic structural failings within what they were doing.
Yeah. So, outstanding performance, our little list of the all-Marvel performance. I've got to say it's either Michael Pena or it's no one here. Like, no one, I don't think anyone's bad at all in this. Everyone is good. Some people are underused, some people are misused, but Michael Pena is like, his his character and his scenes are the ones that people were talking about coming out of this, and like what a chameleon this actor is. I mean, all the word of mouth was, "Oh my god, Michael Pena in this movie," so I feel there's no way around it.
Yeah, no, Michael Pena is the thing that is most memorable. Like, the fact that they finished the movie with one of the telephone sequences speaks volumes about like what they obviously realised they had with it. I do think he kind of gets misused in the middle where he's going through the building and being the kind of heavy and stuff.
Just a bit weird that. But
yeah, but like again, like the 2 telephone sequences where it's just like the entire thing is being carried by his voice in the editing, and I do think the editing is like really important to shout out there because it is very much part and parcel. But his energy is so good in this movie, and when you think about like, I mean, like his other probably big famous role is End of Watch at this point, and how different these 2 roles are. I think like he's just good.
Yeah,
he's back for the second one, as is the rest of the crew, having a look at the credits. But as I said earlier, people were watching the trailer and going like, we want Michael Pena, we want more of those telephone sequence scenes, and I don't think Marvel are not going to give it to people.
No, I just hope you've got to be careful when you try and repeat a thing people like. I mean, ironically, Adam McKay being involved in this, I think the worst stuff about Anchorman 2 is the stuff that they're calling back from Anchorman 1, and the original stuff was better. But we will see what they do with telephone games in Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I'm very, very excited for. Speaking of excited for, next episode is going to be Captain America Civil War. I am very hyped. I'm just going to say it now, it's probably my favourite Marvel movie. And, a lot going on, so we have a lot of prep to do. But it should be good times. In the meantime, I'm going to entertherealworld.com, REEL, filmreel.com. Check out all the content there. Check out From Broadcast Depths, our Lost podcast from Kevin Ford and Ben Lundy. And read the very old and now irrelevant Oscar column written by Mike Thomas and Jerome Cuson, where they have some very strong opinions about the Oscar winners. When you hear this, the Oscars have happened, so who gives a shit? But we do, because we like the writings of Mike Thomas and Jerome Cuson with their very strong opinions. I feel we may have not discussed enough about this movie, but it's a little fun thing. It's surprisingly good given everything. There you go. We did it. We're out of here. Bye, Ben.
Bye.